when you're trying to get your life, when you're trying to get your finances or your professional life in line or your personal life, identify your goals and know that one thing. Know what is most important in life because all the decisions become really easy. So as long as you're honest with yourself about your goals, even if they're not great goals or they're not the most commendable, be honest about your goals and be honest with yourself. And it makes everything really easy.
This is the Fit Investor Podcast, where we talk about how to live a more holistic life of being fit, not only financially, but physically and faithfully. We'll be joined by experts in all these areas to share their experiences and actionable and practical tips so that you can be a fit investor too. So now let's join our hosts, Cale Delaney and Brenna Carls.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another episode of the Fit Investor Podcast. I'm your host, Cale Delaney, here with Brenna, the Megalodon Carls.
Yes.
And today, our special guest is Mr. Matthew Newton. So Matthew holds a doctorate in nursing practice, which he's been practicing medicine for over 15 years and specializes as a nurse anesthetist. After working in the field of anesthesia at a level 1 trauma center, he saw a need for more nursing leaders and started a medical practice focusing on providing high-quality anesthesia services to both major hospital systems and ambulatory care centers. Over the following years, he grew his company to be one of the largest nurse-owned medical practices in North Carolina. During that time, he also got married and started a family. And because of that, he sold his practice in 2021 and relocated to Atlanta, Georgia, so their kids could grow up around the grandparents and family. And this is where he currently serves as the national lead CRNA for a major healthcare company. And in 2020, he began purchasing long and short-term rentals. And he and his wife now own and manage a rental portfolio totaling over $1.4 million in real estate. And like we said, he's a proud husband and father of 2 boys, and philanthropy is a large part of his life. So he volunteers with Camp Kudzu, an organization for children with type 1 diabetes, for over 18 years, and he served on their board of directors for 6. Matthew and his wife, Kristen, they frequently tour and speak on the topic of leadership at nursing conferences, and he's also the co-host of the Plan B CRNA podcast, focusing on medical entrepreneurs and leadership in the medical community. So with that, Matthew, welcome to the Fit Investor Podcast.
Yeah.
Gail Brennan, it's great to be here. Thank you for inviting me. I appreciate it.
Yeah. And excited to get into your story. Obviously, from your bio, you got a lot of stuff going on. And so why don't we just take it back and start off, give us a little bit of your background, how you got into the medicine field, how you got into anesthesia, and take us up to where you are now.
So I started my anesthesia career back in 2015. I've been in medicine as a nurse and various other roles for long before that. But it was interesting when I took my first anesthesia job. It was a really large organization and there was a lot of politics involved and not necessarily always the most positive environment. And after about a year or so of doing that, I thought to myself, and I was like, I feel like I could probably do this better. Everyone's always had the bosses that they work for that they're like, you know what, I would do this differently. I said, I think I'm going to put my money where my mouth is and I'm going to figure this out. So while I was working there, I started a locums anesthesia practice with a couple partners, and we offered locums jobs. A locums job is, for those of you who aren't in medicine, are pretty much in a hospital or a care center, short medical providers. They search out there and they get PRN people or just people that fill the holes when needed. Me and a handful of other CRNAs on our days off in our spare time would go in and help out surgical centers and plastic surgery centers and stuff like that. And it started off small, and then at some point, administration found out and they decided they didn't like that. So they said that you're not allowed to have a locums company while you work here, even though it really didn't affect anything we were doing with work in our spare time. And they gave us an ultimatum and we're like, you're either going to get rid of your company and continue working here, or you're going to stay in your company and quit. We all turned in our notice that day. And it was one of those sink or swim moments, which was excellent because I think in the future, probably 6 months to a year down the road, it would have happened anyway, organically. But getting that boot out of the nest, so to speak, really helped jumpstart our careers. And really, it was a wonderful lesson in believing in myself, because it's one of those things that it's really hard to go out on your own and put all your eggs in the basket based on you, because the threat of failure is just, they can be paralyzing at times. At the time, I was a little grumpy about it. My bosses telling me that. And now I look back and I kind of want to send them a basket of fruit, because I'm like, that was the best thing that could have ever happened to me professionally and personally, because it helped me launch my company. The next interesting thing that happened was after we started the company, me and my partner were like, okay, this is real now. We need to feed our families. So everybody go out and let's find full-time work. You find sites to work, I'll handle 401k, you handle insurances, and we got it all going. And then we ended up having a couple CRNAs that came to us and just said, hey, we really like the way you guys handle yourself and how professional you are. Can we come work for you? And we're like, this is a startup. You know how startups usually go. And they're like, we trust you. You'll do us right. And if it works, great. If it doesn't, that's fine too. And they believed in us, which was even more pressure because when you have a staff working for you, now it's imperative that you succeed.
Right.
But we set out to become the employer that we would want. And it was wonderful. Honestly, it was a great experience. We built our entire company to where if we ever had a question, you just asked our employees and said, hey, we're thinking about doing this. What do you think? And they'd say, this makes us feel appreciated, or we don't really like that. And we would take their opinions to heart. We also did a lot of philanthropy, which was really nice. It was interesting because we used to give back like once a quarter, once or twice a year. We would do we go to get tickets to like a baseball game and invite all the employees out. Come on out, it'll be fun. Let's have a beer and we'll watch a baseball game. And we'd probably get 20% attendance. We'd be like, hey, we're going to go axe throwing, and we get 20% attendance. And then one week I was like, you know what, we're going to go make food at a local food bank for underprivileged people in the area, and 100% attendance. And they brought their family members. And it was like,
Wow.
I never would have thought that would be the thing. And then they pretty much came to us after that. And we're like, hey, can we do 3 volunteer works for every one actual thing? And we were like, yeah, that's fantastic. We love that. So it was a lot of transparency in our company, which was really good. I guess being a mom and pop, it's easier to do that. But over the next probably 5 or 6 years, we expanded to 50 plus employees, probably 20 surgical centers. And then we ran 2 hospitals, and we really got our feet under us, which was really nice. And then my wife and I we got married, and then we started having kids. And one day she was just kind of like, your whole goal for starting this anesthesia company was you want to spend time with your family, and you want to make it to where financially, we're comfortable enough to where if we want to go on vacation, you don't got to look at our bank account. We're there and you're working 6 days a week and you're in meetings till 11 o'clock at night, and you've canceled or cut short 2 or 3 vacations. People would have called in and you've had to go pick up. Because when, everything flows uphill, so it falls on your shoulders when people call in sick and things happen. And in any medical business, no matter how good you run it and how great people, there's always going to be problems. And it's just stressful to you. She's like, so what I propose, because we lived in North Carolina at the time, she's like, we can go, I'd like to be near family. I'd like our kids to live near their grandparents. So it's either my grandparents in Cleveland, or my parents in Cleveland, or your parents in Georgia. She said, I hate the snow, so I hope you pick Georgia. And then I was like, okay, I guess it's time. So I sold my company to my partners, which was a great experience. And I took a job for a large anesthesia company here in Georgia. And this is the first time I've actually I've worked for somebody else in probably 8 years, which has been a little bit of adjustment, but I have such a great group I work with. And I'm the lead CRNA, and I manage goings on in about 18 different states right now, it's been really good. And that's my career in a nutshell.
Yeah.
I have a lot of questions on the anesthesia, and I will try to keep it short because I know we want to get into investment properties and stuff like that. First, kudos to you, Kale, for reading that bio. I'm glad you're the person that reads those out loud in the beginning, because some of those words were like, they would not get through that without stuttering or messing up the word. But anesthesia has always just fascinated me just by the stuff that goes into it. I really don't even know what goes into it. I've Googled it before just to be nerdy. But like, for example, if you're like the head anesthesiologist, you're not really the one. Are you the one that actually puts them under? Or because I've gone under before, and it's first they give you something that they're like, okay, this is just going to relax you and you'll probably fall asleep then. And in my head, I'm like, no, I'm not going to fall asleep. This can't beat me. And then they're like, I need you to count. And I'm like, 5. And then I was like, done. And so do you take over after that? What do you monitor? Can you just give us like we're children, tell us how it works in a nutshell?
I'm not sure you're aware, but you asked a very complicated and political question.
Oh, okay. No, not political, but I don't know, just a dumbed down version of like how it works and what makes us go to like, why is it shut off our brain and like us be sleeping and not even remember any of it?
So in anesthesia, there is a couple different paths you can do. There is the anesthesiologist route. That is, you go to med school, you get your doctorate there, and you go be an anesthesiologist. Then there's the route I took where you get a nursing degree, you go back for your master's, and now it's a doctorate. So I just got my doctorate the other day. than it is a couple years ago. But so that's the nurse anesthetist. And then there's the third route, which is the AA and the anesthesia assistant. That's you have a general like science major, we'll say, and you go be a PA, like a physician's assistant that specializes in anesthesia. The interesting thing about what I do as a nurse anesthetist is nurse anesthetists were actually the original anesthetists. And then what happened is eventually anesthesiologists kind of came in and planted their flag and they took over the whole thing. So everybody always thinks it's the anesthesiologist that puts you to sleep. I'm going to go ahead and say, I think it's about in America, don't quote me on the statistic, but I want to say 80% of the time you're going to sleep with a nurse anesthetist.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Yeah.
So with anesthesia, there's a lot of different ways you can do things. So like the AA, they can't practice independently. They can only practice with an anesthesiologist in a building. A CRNA can actually practice in all 50 states independently, which is what I do, which is why I chose to go to the nursing school in that anesthesia route. But yeah, there's a lot of kind of push and pull between anesthesiologists and CRNAs and all that. All in all, it's a great group. Like anybody that goes into any anesthesia career is going to be very happy. I like working with anesthesiologists. I like working with CRNAs. I also know some anesthesiologists that don't like working with CRNAs. I know some CRNAs that don't like working with AAs. There's a lot of stuff there, but either way, you're safe when you go to sleep.
Yeah. Are the tests hard to take? If I ever had to like redo my career, I think it would either be something with animals or an anesthesiologist or what you do, actual like doing it, because I think it's fascinating.
Funny enough, veterinary school is actually one of the hardest schools to get into in America.
Huh. Didn't know that.
Oddly enough, I want to say they take 1 in 1,000 applicants. When I went to RNA schools, as far as the nursing route goes, you get your general RN, but you can go work on the floor, work in ICUs. You can do a lot of different things as a nurse because nurses are amazing. But if you want to go be an advanced practitioner, which is what I do, you can go be a midwife, you can be a specialist, you can be a nurse practitioner, which is what my wife does, or you can be a nurse anesthetist, CRNA, which is what I do.
Okay.
Of the 4 different branches of APRNs, CRNA is by far the hardest. When I went to school, there was only about 70 to 75 CRNA schools in America, and each only take about 15 students. So you have to have either amazing grades or a really impressive resume. And I had an impressive resume. I didn't have the grades. I wasn't always the smartest one going through school. I don't math sometimes. I was kidding.
I was going to say, this is a dumb question, but is there math involved? Well, there has to be some kind of math involved, right? To figure out
There's a lot of math.
Yeah. And am I correct in assuming, I won't ask any political questions, but am I correct in assuming that it deals something with like your breathing rate? I don't even know which respiratory rate, whatever it's called, your heart rate, all that fun stuff. Does that all go into it?
It all goes into it. Anesthesia is a fascinating career. I could literally talk to you for an hour and a half about how.
Well, we might have to get off of this call and after, like at some point, revisit, because I'm fascinated by it.
Yeah, true. The Fit Investor podcast is going to be all about anesthesia and over fun movies. And
I'll tell you a funny story. I think it's funny. The guy probably didn't. My husband didn't at the time because he was embarrassed. But I had to get an emergency appendectomy a few years ago, and Tennessee is Tennessee. And so I'm sitting there, and it was like 3 a.m. I was already hangry because I couldn't eat. They're like, obviously it's an appendectomy. You can't eat anything. I was starving. And the nurse, and not talking about student nurses, she couldn't poke the vein. And so we had to put an earplug underneath the thing for it to actually get them. I don't know, because I just didn't want them to re-stick me. So that's what we figured out that would work. And anyway, so that's what I was going through. And then I'm sitting there waiting for surgery prep at 3 a.m. And they take me with a little curtain thing. And then here comes my anesthesiologist. And he's like, hey, he's very Southern. And I look down and I'm not lying, he had cowboy boots on. And I was like, they said, so what do you do on the side besides this? And my husband was right there. He's like, what does he do on the side? Are you kidding me? He's an anesthesiologist. That's what he does. I was like, are you on a farm or something? And my husband was like, oh my gosh. And he was like, no. He was like, I just feel comfortable working in these. He was like, I put my little booty things on, but I work in cowboy boots. And I was like, all right. And Drew's like, Brenna, he's probably the best anesthesiologist you could get. Anybody that comes in with cowboy boots seems pretty cool. I'm like, okay, I get it. Everything went well, but it was just odd to me that he wasn't wearing, I don't know, like, what do you wear, Crocs or something? I don't know what you wear, but just cowboy.
You wear Crocs.
Like cowboy boots, you don't think that your anesthesiologist is going to come in with cowboy boots on. I don't know. I thought it was funny. My husband was embarrassed at the time, but pretty cool guy.
Funny you say that. So so one of the things that you do is when you're going in for any procedure, the patients are always incredibly nervous, and we usually give Versed. That kind of takes the edge off. It's a nice drug that calms you down, gets you right to the thing. But one of the things that they teach us is we say verbal Versed. So if I can make you laugh, if I have cowboy boots on that draws your attention away from the procedure that you're about to have, if I'm wearing Crocs or if I'm wearing a fun scrub hat, something like that, it really helps the entire procedure. Because one of the things I always tell patients is some patients will say before they go to sleep, I'm going to wake up hurting, or I know I'm going to wake up nauseous. And there's no amount of drugs or anything I can do. If you're telling yourself that when you go to sleep, you will 100% wake up hurting.
I wouldn't tell myself that. Those cowboys, if you know me as a person, which most of these listeners have started to know me as a person, I was like, "What, sir, what are your qualifications?" That's what I was thinking in my head. I didn't care about the pain at that point. I guess you're right. It did take my mind off of that because I was like, who is this guy? He's just kind of like milking cows. What is he doing?
And the other thing I do is I can speak very technically and just walk circles around people. But I come in there and I'm like, "Hi, y'all, how you doing?" And I talk very down to earth, very layman's terms. I make jokes. If I can get my patient to laugh once or twice, it really it helps with you're going to do something where you're literally surrendering control of your body to a perfect stranger. If we can, as a nurse, one of the things that we do is we're really good at helping patients through tough times. And this is definitely a tough time. So if we can make you laugh, if we can take the edge off with just our personality and make you feel comfortable with us, it just makes your experience that much better. And that's what we always go for.
Yeah.
Okay. Last question on it and I'll move on, Kill. Do people snore under anesthesia or talk in their sleep? And is it you're too under to be able to do any of that?
There are different types of anesthesia. So
yeah,
if you go to sleep with an appendectomy, you're going to be under general anesthesia with a tube. There's no snoring. There's no talking. Doing like a max sedation case where I'm just giving you some Versed, some fentanyl, a little bit of propofol, and keeping you in twilight. You might talk a little bit here and there. And if you're snoring, that means I'm probably not doing something right, and I need to work on keeping your airway open.
Oh yeah, I forgot that. Okay,
that's my bad. I need to.
I look back and that's a dumb question because I forgot you have that thing down your throat. So now you can't talk or you can't. Never mind. Strike that.
Some people do say some very funny things as they're getting ready to go to sleep, but that stays between us and the patient.
Yeah. All right, Cal. I'm not going to ask you. I'm going to make myself sound stupid if I ask any more questions. So let's move on.
Crash course on anesthesia. All right. Let's just kind of, I guess what I wanted to find out, and you touched on it before, was you were working for this company, then you started your own moonlighting, and then they gave you the ultimatum. You left, built your business, and then for family reasons, which is good, you sold it to your partners and then went back to work for the company that you work with currently. So a lot of transitions there over those few years. What, maybe on both ends of the spectrum, in terms of when you left the first company to build your own business, and then when you sold that business to work for another company again, what things during each of those transitions were maybe unexpected or you wish you had known before you had done it?
It's really funny. I want to say that when I left my original place to start my own practice, everybody was incredibly supportive. Shockingly, no. People were quite negative, which is funny. Like the whole crab in the bucket analogy, where when you go crab, you live in Florida, come on, I'm sure you've been crabbing. When you go crabbing, you catch all your crabs, you throw them in a bucket, and you don't have to put a top on it because anytime one of the crabs is getting ready to escape, it climbs to the top, but the other crabs reach up and pull them back down. Don't be a crab in a bucket, because that's what sometimes it felt like. I had people come up when I was like, because I'm professional, so I turn in my notice. I still get notice, and I'm working my time out, and they went, "You're just going to fail. You're just going to be bad."
They actually said that. Usually people at least act nice and just talk about you behind your back. Like,
I do it the right way and just tell everybody about it when I can't hear it. But seriously, they come up there and say, "You're just going to fail." Blah, blah, blah. And my answer to that was, so what? At least I tried. I would much rather get out there, fail, make my mistakes, dust myself off. And next time I'm either going to succeed or I'm going to fail better. And it's funny because, and then some of my employees that met with me, some different people would even go up to them and say, "I can't believe you're going to go work with them. Are you even going to get paid? Are you going to?" And it was like, guys, from those actions, it's funny because it's really changed me and shaped the way I do things. So I'll help anybody. And to where if you're like, "Hey man, I'm starting this company. What do you think about this tax wise? Or what do you think about this? Do you happen to have anybody in your network that does?" Absolutely. Let me help you. Even if I get nothing in return. because that's what we should be doing is we should be building each other up. We shouldn't be holding each other down because I want you to succeed. And if you do great and you succeed, then maybe one day you'll remember me, pull me up there with you. And if you don't, excellent. You live your best life because that's what we should be doing. We should all be trying to achieve our goals. And it's funny. So like the choice to sell my company was actually a fairly simple choice because one of the things I always ask people like on our podcast is I'm like, why do you do what you do? You guys ever seen City Slickers back in like the early 90s where Curly would say, he'd hold his finger up and he'd say that one thing and they'd say, what is it? And he said, it's the secret of life.
Yeah.
Once you're one thing, all your decisions and everything you do gets really easy. And my one thing is my family. And there's no wrong, right answer. And it could be all the power in the world. It could be, I want to be a millionaire. It could be, I want to have fancy cars and beautiful men and women. But as long as when you're honest with yourself, what that is, then your decisions get really easy. So my one thing is I want to spend time with my family. I want to raise my children. I want to be around my parents for as long as they're around. I want my kids to grow up their cousins. And when it was like, hey, Matt, I want to move to Georgia to be around your family. And so that hits all of my goals. So as long as I can find something that financially keeps us in roughly the same place, then that's a perfect, and it's just like, great. So I'm leaving something that, great. I made fantastic money. It was really nice. I had a nice title. I had all the stuff that people really go for, the power and all that. But I'll sacrifice that in a heartbeat to go be just another W-2 employee for a while. And some say, okay, maybe it's a step down. But realistically, I take my kids to school almost every single day of the week. I put them to bed every single night. And there is nothing better than that.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's really good because one of the main catalysts for doing this podcast was to talk about how to have a more holistic or well-rounded life. And because in the entrepreneurial world in particular, it oftentimes becomes so very lopsided, right? Especially in the early years where you're typically focusing on the business aspect of things more so than the other aspects of life. And so it's great to get other people's experiences of why they do what they do, how they do what they do, and how they, like you said, what is your one thing and what is success to you? Because success is different things for different people. And it doesn't necessarily just need to be financially. Perhaps it is, and maybe it should be more so focusing on time with the family, right? Or just having a better balanced life. And so I love it. I love hearing things like that because I learned from that. My life is still certainly not quite in the balance that it needs to go. It's still lopsided in one direction. So kudos to you for being able to make pretty big decisions like that and be true to what your one thing, your intent, your original purpose was. Because I think that's a big stumbling block for a lot of people, especially when they do start a business. It becomes all consuming and then neglecting these other areas of your life. So to be able to put that in perspective and reanalyze your situation and say, okay, I don't need, like you said, I don't need the titles. I don't need the control or whatever it may be of owning a business. I'm fine with going to work for someone because that still accomplishes all the goals that I set out for originally. I think that's great and great perspective that you had. In terms of the real estate, take us through that. Like, where did that come into play? Why and how?
Do that. So actually one more thing, one of my favorite thing that we did, I want to talk about, and I'll hop on the real estate. My favorite thing we did, one of my partners, actually it was his idea. We used to do something for our company we own called First Fruits, to where we would, every year when we have our yearly meeting for where we were going as a business this year, we'd always pick a number of how much we were going to donate to charity, which I loved. Had to be human charity, non-political, a couple stipulations, and what we would do is no matter what, if we got hit hard that year, then the money came out of the owner's pockets. If we didn't, it came out of the profit of the company. So for all of our employees, all of our full-time employees, what we would do is at the end of the year, when we're getting ready to give out, usually it was somewhere between 10 and 20 grand to different charity. We'd have our big Christmas party. And it was an absolute blast. We'd all get around a nice Christmas dinner. All the employees would be there. We'd all have one too many drinks. And then everybody would throw their charity in the pot. And every single employee got an equal percent of the money to give out. And we would all, and of course, probably 5 or 6 people wouldn't have a charity. So then it came to the people that did have charities. They liked to, let me convince you why my charity is worth your percent. And we would all sit there and we'd talk and we'd all be like, my charity sees, my My charity Camp Kudzu sees over 1,000 children a year, changing their lives with type 1 diabetes. It's a wonderful organization. And my partner who owned a free clinic, my charity gives back to the locals in the area here. And it was an absolute blast. And I think our employees really loved it. But it was one of our favorite things. And the other thing is I'm always like service to your community. Like having that every year was just an absolute blast. And it was a lot of fun. So as far as the real estate goes, my wife and I are really good at preparing to do things. So if you look at our garage, you'd think we're amazing hikers because of all the hiking stuff we have, and tennis players and pickleball players. And this is going to be fun. I have a new hobby and I'm going to buy all this stuff to do the hobby. For a while, real estate was my stuff. And I'm like, I'm going to do this. I had all my Caucus podcasts queued on my phone. I wasn't listening to them, but I had them. They were definitely there. And then I had a stack of real estate books because I'm going to learn how to do long-term rentals. And they collected amazing amounts of dust. And every 6 months I hit them and they dust them off. And then 2020 kind of happened and everything just went to hell. And I watched my 401k take $100,000+ swings. And I was like, maybe this X amount into your 401k thing for retirement isn't as foolproof as you thought, because I have most of my eggs in one basket, and that's scary. Me and my wife, one of the things that we do, and it's not necessarily formal, but roughly every quarter we sit down and we talk about finances. And she's, where are we at? What are we doing? What's cooking? What's our plan? And we tweak our plans for the year about what we're doing. I think in a healthy relationship, you definitely need to have those conversations about what's your credit card look like? What's our investment plan? We plan on our personal goals to buy one property a year. What's it look like? How's our funds look to getting ready to buy it? What's the timeline? What are we going to do long term? Are we going to do short term? We had these great conversations. For one, it's really stimulating just for the relationship, getting to have something fun to do with your spouse. But two, it's really good to stay informed to make sure everybody's on the same page. So we sat down and we're like, all right, this 401k thing's scary with 2020. We need to do some other things. So we started looking into private equity companies, which we've invested in. And we started looking into real estate, because I personally feel that real estate is one of the best stores and wealth creators there is, my personal opinion. And I said, okay, my company at the time, this was back when I had my company, was the most expensive medical providers probably in the hospital. So when the hospital was up in the cost, the first thing they did was cut us. No work for just a minute. And in that time, I was like, I can sit at home and be like, we don't have any work for this month, or I can better myself. So I literally dusted off all those books and all those podcasts. And I think I probably sat down for 6 hours a day. I took notes. I'm a fantastic student. I've been through enough schooling, and I literally went through all of these books. And I just said, okay, I like this avenue. I like this avenue. And I picked long-term rentals, short-term rentals, trailer park homes. What do I think the best thing is? And then my wife and me sat down and I said, okay, here's the benefits of this. Here's what the cash flow will look like. Here's what our potential retirement age. And this is what we can do when we get to retire. Maybe we can retire early So we chose to end up going into long-term rentals. And I try to be as humble as I can. The smarter I get, the dumber I realize I really am. So I found some people around me that were a lot smarter than me. I found a fantastic real estate agent in the area that is just amazing. And I told her what I'm looking for. I told her my plan. And I said, I don't know what I'm doing. I know just enough to be dangerous. Here's what I'm looking for. And she's, I got you. And it was great. She probably took about 2 months to find me the perfect place. And we'd walk into places and she'd look around and she'd no, really, let's go. And then the next day she'd take me to these new places and we'd look at them. And it was great because I'm like, you have a sale. Just pick the right place. And you pick the right one and it cash flows. It works out great. And, you have a fan and I'm coming back every year. And we bought our first place. Then we bought our second place and it's been working great. And I think the last place I bought, I didn't even see it because she just, hey, here's your new property. You need to buy this one. And I'm like, okay. She did a video walkthrough with me and I trust her implicitly. And I shut the whole thing up. I bought it through the mail, which is great because I lived in Georgia at the time. And she happened to steer me wrong. And then she hooked me up with a nice property manager in the area that gave me a great rate and rely very heavily on my team. And thus far, it's been an absolute blessing. And we have a really nice kind of retirement plan set up. We own 3 long-term rentals right now and 1 short-term rental, which has been interesting and fun to manage a short-term rental. But the way it's coming right now, I guess the rough plan is 2025-ish. We're going to be hopefully, assuming our economy permits, cash out refi. And then hopefully we can parlay that into 1 or 2 more places, at least 1, if not 2 more. And then my goal is by 2028, I'd like to own about 10 long-term rentals. And then we'll reassess where we're at there. Because my thing is, if my wife and I can pull back at work from work at 45 to where we're working maybe 1 day a week at our leisure. Our places are mostly paid off. Each one gets roughly $2,000, we'll say to $2,500 a month in rent. But you can live on that. We can focus on the things that really matter most, like raising our kids and vacationing with them and doing that kind of stuff. So that's our rough plan in a nutshell. We'll see how it goes, but we're not thinking of not flexible, but that's how we're looking right now. And it's been a great process. And my wife and I are very much on the same page, which is really nice. I always tell people that when one of the biggest things you can do to a detriment of your success is pick the wrong partner. My wife trusts me implicitly, which is scary. I wish she would push back a little more, but she trusts my opinions and I run them by her. And she tells me whether she likes them or not. And then we go from there. And everything I do, she supports it, which is really great because I've definitely had some significant failures in my life and setbacks. I ran medical practice that failed probably a couple years ago. And I was like, oh my gosh, I got to tell my wife about this, that we lost a bunch of money and stuff. And when I told her, her response pretty much was, if you have to do it again, what are you going to do differently? And I'm like, oh my gosh, let me tell you, like I listed all 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 things. And it's all my fault. It wasn't my fault. Yeah, a little bit, but definitely my fault because I should have spoke up. I should have been more assertive. I'm like, I would have done these things differently. And if I do it again, I'm going to do it differently this time. And she's like, how much we lose? I think, and I gave her the number. And she sounds like that was just an expensive education. And that was the end of it. And I was like, that's what you want. That's what you want in a partner. Did you learn from the experience? I'm not mad. And next time we do it, we're going to do it better. And it's funny because actually me and her right now are looking into opening up a mental health clinic. We're like looking to run over the performer right now. And all the lessons that I took from my first practice that didn't work well is coming into play, which is, I'm really glad. I feel like maybe everything happens for a reason. So for that one medical practice that didn't work, like I think it's going to make this next one really successful. And I think I'll be able to do a lot of good for kind of the mental health community in my area, which is going to be really nice.
Yeah.
So there's a few things that I want to point out with this because there's so many books and there's so many conferences and there's so many things that you can go to and people are like, what's the secret sauce? And what I like about what you just said, there's a few things. First, you didn't just go all into long-term rentals without doing your education. You said you spent about 6 hours a day researching. Then you went to your wife and was like, hey, this is what I found out. You came to her with what you've learned and you were open with that realtor and like, hey, I do know this much. I've taught myself this much, but I don't know enough. Can you help? And so you reached out for help. You went to your wife prepared and it sounds like an awesome partner where y'all work together. But to get to that, you had to have a mindset of there's so many people in a W-2 job. And I've seen it firsthand where they're like, it's guaranteed pay. And I know I could make 3 times this amount per year, but they can't get out of that mindset of working day in and day out. And what they don't see is, it's guaranteed pay. And then they're going to have their 401k, but they can't touch that 401k until they're mid-60s. If they do, it's going to be a penalty. If they start cutting jobs, and mortgage is a great example right now in the rate environment we're in, banks are just cutting jobs left and right. They've cut so many jobs. They don't care. They don't care if you unfortunately pass away tomorrow. They're like, okay, let's send flowers to the family. Who are we going to get to replace this person? And it's not, you're putting your family first now, which people are like, yeah, but then, that 401k is guaranteed. No, it's not. If you look back at your 401k in 2020, I would just tell my clients, do not look at your 401k because if you do, you're going to have a mild heart attack probably. And what's great about rental income is, real estate investing is still a game. It's still investing. It's still a little bit of a risk. But the thing is, if you're paying into your mortgage $2,000 a month, but you're getting $4,000 a month in rent, that's $2,000 extra. You're appreciating that property. It's something you own. It's that money's coming to you right then. It's not something that you can't touch until you're mid-60s. You're not going to get penalized. It can't be like, oh, the stocks were really bad today. The rental income I got last month for $2,000 net is now $200. It doesn't work like that. I want people to listen to keep that open mindset of one, don't just drop everything you're doing and go into real estate. You do have to do your education behind it. But 2, don't have that W-2 mindset of where working for the man or whatever you want to call it is your only way out and the only way to invest, because that's a very minimal, small way to invest in your life and in your family's life to actually be there and live your life with them. And now I'm off my soapbox and I'll stop.
What they say a W-2 is it's the price you're willing to accept or to sacrifice your dreams.
Yeah.
Like seriously, if you think about it, being comfortable is a dangerous thing.
Yeah.
Maybe I'll just my position for a little while longer. And I'm not saying don't enjoy your life and be comfortable, but you should always have something you're working on. If not like a passion project or like my biggest thing is I like to sink my teeth into something. Do I need to start a new medical practice? Absolutely not. But it serves my community. Do I think it's going to be a great financial investment? Absolutely. Do I need to buy more real estate? Yeah, but it's fun. I definitely enjoy it. It's something my wife does. My mom even gets in on it. And like, whenever we get ready to buy a new property, I'll get text messages at 4 a.m. from my mom. Hey, did you see this property in the area? Funny enough, my mom's actually found most of our properties for us. So it's her and my realtor, which is just a 70-year-old stereotypical Italian mother. but it's like, do we need to do these things? No, because I have a great W-2. I can be comfortable on that. But at the same time, it's like, I want more. I want to set myself up for if I want to retire before 55, and I definitely do, that maybe it's an option. Will it happen? I don't know. Hopefully. So don't be comfortable with don't be comfortable.
Yeah. And what I love about this is that number one, there's so many staying on real estate. There's so many avenues, paths, strategies, whatever you can go with asset classes with real estate. There's such a variety that it can suit whatever your goals are, frankly. And what I like about your path is you're doing more of the slow roll, right? You're not looking to buy 20 properties this year so you can quit tomorrow. You're fine with, like you said, one a year. That's going to get you to your goal of hopefully retiring early and being able to focus even more on your family and your children and everything. Because I think that's important, because I think a lot of people in the W-2 world or whatever, you're talking to them and you talk to them about investing. And a lot of people think it's one or the other, right? You can't do both. And they just say, okay, that's it. I'm not going to even try. I'm not going to get started. And so I always tell people, look, just do something just like you do. I don't buy one a year. Seriously, like it's not that hard. Just buy one a year. And whatever, if you put them on, if you don't want to be over leveraged or that type of thing, or plan on leverage, put them on 15-year mortgages and think about it. In 15 years, how much wealth are you going to have by a very simple, relatively slow strategy? It's not rocket science. It really is not. Right. And you can work your W-2 if you want. You can do whatever else you want. Just buy that one property a year. And if you want to do something else, if you want to scale it quicker, then great. But you just do something. It doesn't have to be.
Hey guys, it's Brenna Carl, CEO and co-founder of The Mortgage Shop. When I'm not spending my time searching for the best pizza in town, working out because of pizza, or fighting sharks as Kale likes to say, I spend my time educating clients on the best investment products that will help them build generational wealth and making sure their loan process is as smooth as warm butter on a piece of toast. Call us today to get started with your investment journey at 800-816-7982 or talk more about pizza. Talk to you soon.
It's funny because I was talking to somebody. Now I have a decent real estate portfolio, and they're like, "We're not like you." And I'm like, "I started off with nothing. I started with nothing. I mean, it's for 5% nowadays. We'll see, but you can get loans for very little."
Yeah.
And there's things that you can do to where you can do the Robert Kiyosaki method, use other people's money. There's a lot of creative financing and things that you can do to just start off, because the whole thing is just start. When's the best time to buy a house? It's yesterday. It's just funny. Like, one of the other tactics, which I've found that I do, is I'm incredibly invasive when I talk to people. I ask really personal questions about your finances. And I work with surgeons galore, and these doctors, they make obscene amounts of money. And I can't tell you, every time I'll sit in the OR like on a weekly basis and say, "Hey doc," I'll talk up a little bit with them friends so they can just see that I'm a decent guy. And I'll say, "Hey, what do you do with your money? Do you have any interesting investments that you do?" And 50% of them will look at me like, "Nurse, I don't think so." But the 50% that do open up, they'll be like, "Oh, absolutely. I'm invested in a private equity company that builds all of the hotels in the area," or "I'm invested in a private equity company that does this." And boy, is that a good thing. Or they'll tell me like, "Man, I got my butt handed to me on this." And I was like, because people don't talk about private equity. Nobody knows these things. And I'm like, guys, like, real estate's great. Private equity is definitely a lot riskier. But I'm like, when you put money forward and then you get a multiple of 10 back on 5 years, that's also not too bad. It's good to have all your eggs in different baskets. So I'm like, spread it out. Everything's not in real estate. Everything's not just sitting in a bank account. Everything's on private equity or my 401k. I try to just spread everything evenly. That way something's going to work.
Yeah.
And I like the point that, like, the doctors or whomever is, I'm not like you. No, you're not. But the thing is, I've heard that a lot, and I give that iceberg example. Like they only see the tip of the iceberg. I'm not, contrary to popular belief, I'm not that smart. I don't think.
Nobody is like you, Brenna. Come on.
Yeah, crazy wise. But like what I think is what you have to have is a little bit of common sense, a little more than a little bit, but common sense and work ethic to get to where you want to be. It's not about being smart because honestly, and this is no offense to really smart people, but I have people that are coming in that are a lot smarter than me in a lot of different avenues, whether it be engineering or being a doctor, like a brain surgeon, and they're very smart. And you may think that's going to take you a long way, but it's not. I will outwork and out hustle some of the smartest people and be on top because you have to have that a little bit of common sense again to know what you're getting into, learn what you're doing, but then that work ethic. And so people like, yes, Matthew's very smart and does anesthesiology and all that fun stuff and has to figure out what to do with all of that. But you heard him. He spent 6 hours a day learning all of this stuff at first just to get into it. You have to put the work in. It doesn't matter if you're smart. If you think you're like, oh, I am smart, so I'm going to get this, you may fail because you're not trying hard. And it's not hard, but it's not easy either. So you have to have that happy medium.
To your point, it's interesting because in my invasive questions that I asked to the doctors, you also get to realize just because they may make $300,000 to $500,000 a year or whatever some of these surgeons make, that doesn't mean they're good with their money. That doesn't mean they invest. A lot of them live paycheck to paycheck, which is interesting. And the ones that are good, they give you those nuggets of like wisdom. You're like, man, I'm really going to look into these new avenues of investments. But a lot of them don't. And then the other thing that I always tell people, which I'm like, have a mentor. And I've done a thing or two in my life and I'm not that smart, but I do network. Your network is your net worth. It really is. The 5 people that you're around most, you're the average of them. So if you're picking your friends where they're going to jail, they're on drugs, or they're making poor financial decisions, like you're not, you may be not doing that, but you eventually get lumped in with that. But if you're picking people that you're like, hey, my goal is to be the COO of this company, or my goal is to invest in a real estate syndication or run the syndication, those are the people you want to associate with. I do this really fun thing where I force mentorship on people. So I'm like, you're going to be my mentor, whether you like it or not. And I'm going to find a way to weasel myself into your life at least once a quarter for a lunch. And the funny thing is, it's like the people that I do this with, they absolutely know that I'm picking their brain. And I'm like, hey, can we go out to lunch? I'll buy you lunch. Let me tell you about my life. What do you think I should do here? What do you think about this? How's everything going for you? Tell me some of your biggest failures. Tell me some of your biggest successes. The lunches that I get work. I have 1 or 2 people that I do that with now, and it's invaluable. The $30 lunch I'm going to pay for is going to give me just an incredible amount of wisdom. And then half the time it'll lead to, hey, Matt, I have a really great investment idea for you. Why don't you come into the office and we'll talk about this? Or, hey, Matt, why don't you look into this work? I know this. It was funny. One of those lunches actually led to, hey, I know the city planner for this area. He's looking at what you were talking about. Why don't you go talk to him? I'll just set up the lunch. Don't worry about it. That kind of stuff. And it's just, man, it's really people helping people. The people at the bottom always compete. People at the top always collaborate. And that's where we should be. We should all be collaborating. We should all be building each other up and helping each other out.
Yeah. No, 100%. Yeah. So I do want to just transition a little bit.
We decided to split this podcast into 2 pieces.
No, Kel made a mistake of having both of us on at the same time because I feel like we're like the same.
When I do my interviews for my podcast, like the actual host of it, I'm sure he cusses me a little bit because they all run and long and they all have the big
He all does that to me. Yeah, he has to tell me to stop almost.
We're just going to get one of those, I don't know, figure out how to do it. We're going to get one of those like big canes, the hooks that they pull you off the stage.
Or just somebody to say, Sean.
Figure out how to do it virtually.
Some white tail's going to be like, all right, guys, want to wrap it up?
Yeah. But no, we could obviously go on about this stuff for forever, but let's change gears a little bit and let's talk about fitness a little bit and just tell us what do you do in your life to still keep that an important aspect of your life and why is that important?
So fitness is actually a really long, interesting thing with me. I've always struggled with fitness. I played high school football and I was relatively decent at it. And then I went to college to play college football and I was terrible. I was being 6'4". I was probably one of the smallest linemen out there. And did either of you guys play college sports at all?
I played 1 semester of rugby.
I played one semester of tennis, and then I found out I had to go to the practice. I had 2 days go to the practice before my 8 a.m. class, and I was like, "No, I'm good. I'm good."
Yeah, I'll tell you a real quick story on that. So I'm not a big guy. Like I lift weights and stuff, so I'm bigger than my frame would suggest otherwise, but I'm not just a big stocky guy. And so I showed up to the rugby, the first practice, and the coach came out and he smiled and he was missing half his teeth. And I was like, maybe this isn't the best decision here.
Pretty attached to your teeth, it sounds like.
I think it's a good indication of if you're doing something that you should be or not.
So one of the things they don't tell you when you go play football is they want their linemen as big as possible. When I was a lineman, I remember my first meal. Of course, they don't do this, but I remember my first meal team. The coaches came up and they said, "Mr. Newton, is that all you're going to eat?" And I'm like, "No, this is good. I have a piece of baked chicken and some like green beans and stuff." And they're like, "We'll be right back." And they came back with a tray and it had 2 pieces of pizza. They had some ice cream on there. They made a real fat kid's dream. And then they make you sign in at your meals. So 2 meals a day, you have to eat with the team and you sign in. And Mr. Newton, is that all you're going to eat? You get all these meals until you figure out that, oh, I really need to have 2 pieces of pizza, 2 pieces of chicken. Here's a quarter of a loaf of bread and all this other trash that you want me to eat. When I went to college to play football, I started off, I was 240 pounds of just like rock hard muscle. I felt great. I looked great. And very quickly I shot up to about 320 pounds of fat and muscle. I was very strong. Benching 400. It was like my party trick. I'd push up 4. I'd have the crescent bruises on my shoulder blades after that. I'm like, I could do it once or twice. That was my thing. Also really fat. But it was just my blood pressure was going to the roof. And after about a year of doing that, I was like, I feel like trash. I feel terrible. And you don't like eating like that. But after 3 months of doing it, eventually you're like, okay, this is second nature. And I'll tell you, when you get used to that, it breaks that off button in your head to where you're like, I feel satiated. And playing football was the best and worst thing that probably ever happened to me. So when I actually quit football after about a year, they don't teach you how to stop. And honestly, it's like something that we really should talk about is like in education for people going into playing. And I know it sounds silly, it's those kinds of things. It's how do you stop being this athletic person on these teams and adapt in a healthy way? Because when you quit, it's just goodbye, you're done. I went from about over the year, I went from about 320 to just shy of 400 pounds because I was still eating the same way, but I didn't have 4 hours of practice every day. And I felt awful. I was terrible. And then over the next number of years after I played football with me through my college career, I just yo-yoed between 395 and like 340. And it was awful. It was terrible. It was something I always struggled with. I'd do really great for a while. I'd do really bad for a while. But like when you're eating garbage, you order a Taco Bell as a number 2 and a number 4. And seriously, once again, though, like they break that off button in your head where you like, you don't feel satiated until you're uncomfortable. And people that haven't gone through that kind of thing, I don't want to say it's like addiction, but it's like addiction. But when you haven't gone through it, it's really hard to grasp and understand. So like even to the point now to when I go out places, if I order like a big meal and I know it's a big meal, like I'm like, let's bring a box because I'll put half of it in the box and I'll eat the rest. If not, if it's just sitting there, I'll eat it. And I do things to try to be as disciplined as I can. And one of the things, I'm a big creature of habit. So if I'm doing it, I'm doing it. And if I'm not doing it and it breaks my habit, then I'm not doing it. So it was probably 2015 or so, 16, when my wife and I met. I should probably definitely know that date if she's listening. We met, and it was one of the best things that happened to me because at the time I was probably 340-ish, 350. And about 3 or 4 months in, she called me up. It was like 6 a.m. and she's like, hey, get your stuff on. We're going for a run. And I'm like, oh, I don't run. That's not a thing. And she's like, I like you. I want you to be around for a while. We're going to be together. You're going to run. And I'm like, okay. And she came over that morning and she pushed me so hard. I ran my first mile in 5 years. And that's how it started. And now we're one of those 5K on Thanksgiving families. And I love it. I never thought I would love it. And I absolutely love that. But everyone started Thanksgiving off with a 5K. So one of my big things, as long as I have a goal I'm working towards, I do really well with my health and exercise. I've been sitting around 320 for a number of years, which is still overweight, not doing great there. And so this last year I said, okay, I had my second kid. I'm going to be around. I'm going to raise these kids. They're going to Vegas with me on their 21st birthday and I'm not going to have a heart attack. That's my thing. And it's coincidentally, my cousin called and said, hey, I'm going to do a 10K in September. Do you want to come? And I was like, yes, I do. So it's one of my things to myself that I have always done is if somebody invites me to do something exercise wise, I never say no. So my wife says, yeah, that sounds funny because like so having the motivation to start on your own is hard. But I'm like, if you say, hey, Matt, we're going to go for a run, I will always say yes. Because I'm like, if you're going to do it, then I sure as hell can do this. So I'm like, all right, I guess I'm going to do a 10K. This sounds awful. So I've been training for a 10K for a couple months now. And it's actually great. So I went from 320 when I started and I'm down to 280 now, which is excellent. And I actually just got back right before we got on this podcast from a 6-mile run. Slow, but I'm doing it. And it's great. So every day I try to be a creature of habit. So once a week, I do a 6-mile run. The following day, I'll do a 1 to 2 mile run. I take a day off. The next day, I'll do my rower, Peloton, and then another 1 mile run. I try to run about 10 miles a week if I can. So no matter how much time I allocate at once, I do it. But either way, I'm going to hit 10 miles barring someone foreseeing the consequence. And then, like I said, I try to stick to my Peloton and my rower, and I go from there. And like I said, as long as I can stick with the discipline, it's great. And the nicest thing is my wife really supports it. So it doesn't matter what's going on. If I'm like, hey, you can go for a run, she's like, okay, go. She's the same way. Like the answer is always yes when it comes to fitness and health.
Yeah.
All I got from that was that I missed my calling in life and I should have been a lineman. Because if you're able, I'm kidding, mostly. But the 2 pizza, like giving me, that sounds like a dream, but I get it. I'm joking, but at the same time, I'm like, man, I wonder if there's any way I could look into that. Kidding, because I'm only 5 feet. But what I got from that, there's so many things.
There's the women's football league. Come on, Brandon.
I'm only 5 feet though. I'd be a quarterback, I think, or I don't know, take somebody out at the knees. I don't know. But a few things in there with like mental health, because you mentioned you might open up a mental health facility and things like that. It goes both ways. So it is mentally draining because like for you in football, like they're giving you all this stuff and then it's just, okay, you're done. Like you're not playing anymore. You have to go on your own. And it is a mental thing. Like most people don't realize when you're full, it just means you're content. And it takes, what is it, like a half hour or something like that for your mind to catch up with your stomach. And I was the same way when I was younger. I was doing all the activities, so it really didn't matter when I was really young. But it was like, and I was raised with my family in a Southern home. You eat and like you eat full meant, oh my gosh, I can't breathe. When full really means content. And then you kind of left to your own devices after you do the football thing. Or on the other end of the spectrum, I competed in fitness shows and it's very unhealthy on the other end of the spectrum, not eating enough. And then you get this like body mentality of like always needing to look a certain way like that when that's not attainable. And neither is the amount of food that they were trying to make you eat. That's not attainable either, like doing it for your body and for your health. And so the people that are listening, unhealthy isn't one size fits all. Unhealthy can go on opposite ends of the spectrum. And it is good to put it out there that make sure that you look into other areas of people saying, oh, you need to do this, you need to do this, just like long-term rentals or opening up a business, look into what's actually healthy and what's out there and what's people are just telling you or trying to literally feed you, if that makes sense. But yeah, okay, I'm off my soapbox on that.
Yeah. And I think the other important thing there is because fitness, for whatever reason, and I still don't quite understand it, frankly, why fitness is one of the hardest things for people to commit to or get into. I really don't know why.
Because I think they think it's a body image. They think it's, and that's another point Matt made. P is still healthy and there for his kids. It's not being healthy and being in fitness isn't what you look like.
Right,
it's how you live your life.
But I think the important thing that I wanted to touch on there was if you do struggle with that in terms of getting started or finding something to do that you're going to enjoy or whatever, committing to something, just like you said, Matthew, when somebody asks you if you want to do something, you always say yes. And I think we had talked about this on another episode recently, but just for whatever reason, again, human nature, we're more likely to be okay with letting ourselves down versus letting down somebody else. If you do struggle, commit to something with somebody or put it out there so that there's a level of accountability now that if you don't do it, now you're having to disappoint or let down other people, which just statistically we're less likely to do. So yeah, committing to a 5K or a 10K, that's going to force you to do something or whatever. Just some type of event that you can train to or work towards. There's all these obstacle races, Spartans and Tough Mudders and stuff like that, which, you can do, which are somewhat enjoyable. And again, it's just a way to help you get started, and you may find that you actually like it and find something that you can stick with and be consistent with. So I just think that's a great tip really to get started into doing something if you struggle with that.
Matt,
Well, yeah.
when you run, so as we aren't any spring chickens anymore, and I'm speaking for myself when I say this, but when you run, if you're running 10 miles a week, do you feel tiredness or fatigue in your joints, knees, or anything like that? What can you give our listeners because some people are like, yeah, I'd like to do that, but my knees are already like achy or all these things, because it is like a weight bearing exercise. So what's your advice on that? Or what have you seen struggles with that running and getting through that?
No, my answer is probably not the best one. It's just get over it and do it.
Okay.
Well, thank you. Thank you.
Start that.
Honestly, like barring something is grinding and swelling, you're going to find excuses not to exercise.
Yeah.
Gosh, I drank a little too much last night and I don't feel like getting up in the morning, or I had a big meal for dinner and I don't want to go for a run tonight, or there's a dog barking outside. It's very distracting. I can't go for the run tonight, but you will always find it. So give yourself an excuse. You're going to take it. So just get out there and do it. And when I can't, I won't. Because I'll tell you, like when I do a 6-mile run, it kills me. I'm going to be exhausted tomorrow, absolutely exhausted. And it's like the following day, like it's like clock. Like I did a 6-mile run this morning. It was nice and slow, but I did it. I'm happy. But tomorrow, come 3:00, I'm going to feel completely wiped out for the rest of the night. And you know what I'm going to do? My wife's going to get off work get home about 8:00 or so after I put the kids to bed. I'm going to go for a mile run. And I'm going to hate it. And I'm going to go do it. But I'll tell you, the more I do it, the more I like it and the easier it gets.
Yeah.
As long as I accept this is just what I do, then this is what I do.
I like it.
And I think ultimately, and again, weightlifting's my thing. I've been doing it for decades and decades now. But for me, I think eventually you start to embrace the pain, frankly. It's
Unless
soreness.
it's an actual bad pain. Let's not talk like
It's
if you
injury,
rupture
okay.
your like chest muscle, you don't just go through it.
Yeah. Okay. I'm not talking about serious injury. The general soreness, physical pain comes from exercise. To me, I embrace that. And if I don't feel some type of pain in a day, then I haven't been doing things well enough.
Honestly, though, you need this and you need this you time. So can say you're an investor, you're a W-2 employee, you're a father, you're everything that is taking every bit of your mental capacity and your physical capacity. You need that 30 minutes to 1 hour a day or every other day to concentrate on you, to take care of you, to clear your mind. I listen to podcasts when I run. I listen to music when I run, depending on the mood I am. But it's funny because no matter what I do, at some point on my run, I get in my head and I'm like working through the issues of the day, working through the things and solving problems. And I can't tell you how many times that I'm on a run, come back and I'm like, I know what I'm going to do. Or I'll pull my phone out and do like a voice dictation as I'm running about a great idea I had that I was going to solve a problem in my personal or professional life. It's that reset. Because if you don't take care of your body, your mind, your soul, then you're not going to be of any use when it comes to actually serving as a father or as a provider.
Yeah. And that's important. The mental health portion of it is critical. And for me, it's opposite, actually. The gym time for me is time to shut my brain down in terms of that's the only time that I can not think about everything. Right. That's critical for me because I'm the type of person where my mind's racing all day long, all night long. So that time in the gym is the only time that I can really shut things off and focus on something more singularly and get a little de-stress time, frankly, is what it is for me. So either way, though, the physical fitness is humongous for the mental stress relief. You mentioned mind, body, and soul. So let's talk about that. Let's talk about the soul. Take us through a little bit of your faith journey. I know you say you're Catholic. Did you grow up in a Catholic household? Just trying to take us through that a little bit.
So I grew up in a very stereotypical Italian Catholic household, and it's great. So I grew up, my parents went to church. They took me to church. As a kid, you do your thing. And then, but as you grow in your faith, you get your communion, you get your confirmation, you do all these things. You really, as an adult, takes a life of its own. I was an altar boy for a very long time, I think until I was like 18. And it was excellent. It definitely gives you a different view on how things are done. And I personally feel like that's something that we're missing nowadays is maybe not Catholic, but some sort of Jesus. Everybody needs something. We need a little bit of a higher calling because I feel like nowadays we've gotten into this secular. I live for me at the moment, whatever feels the best, whatever is most pleasurable or I desire most at the moment is what reigns supreme. And there's nothing there to say, hey, where's your morals? Where's your higher power? Maybe it's not, maybe you aren't the thing. Maybe you should be focusing on other things. Because you look at that, then, your community service declines, your volunteer work declines because you're serving you. I'd say when you treat yourself like the deity, you serve nothing else. No matter what your religion is, pick something and go with it. It helps you be a better, well-rounded people. Like I know we like our biggest thing is we want to raise our children in the Catholic Church or any church, but the Catholic Church has get a good sense of ethics and morals instilled in them. And I feel like that's a great base for all the craziness that life is going to throw at you, especially nowadays. And I want my kids to say, I know what's right. I know what's wrong. And now I'm taking in all this information that the world has given me and I'm going to make my own decision, whether I agree with their decisions or not. At least I know I did my part. I gave them a good base to jump off of and a good moral place to come from. And one of my biggest things right now is, we don't attend church regularly, which we should. Having moved to Georgia, like I love excuses, but we just haven't found a good church that we've joined yet. My wife works on the weekends sometimes. We have events, we do stuff with the family, blah, 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 blah. We should still attend church more. And we're working on getting into that because one of our things we want is our children to attend Catholic school if they can. So that's something I'm working on over the next couple months is hopefully we can find a good community to join.
Yeah. Like you mentioned today, we are in a world of our own personal truths, which means that there is no truth, right? So yeah, it's even more critical to have a moral base, a moral standard, and instill that in your children if you do have children. Because, and again, in today's, especially Western society, where children are raised more or less in the school system, right? They spend more time there typically than with their parents or any other thing. And so that's what's going to influence them the most. The people that they hang around, we talked about your network, but the people that they hang around and what they're being taught in the school system, which frankly is pretty anti-God. Let's just say it. And so if that's what's being fed into them, what do you think they're going to start believing and acting out towards? So it's just even more and more critical in today's society and today's world that we can promote and give children, but ourselves as well, a moral basis that, again, for us coming from believing in Jesus, comes from there, comes from the scripture, comes from the Bible. And that there needs to be a black and white, right? There needs to be a truth, there needs to be a right, and there needs to be a wrong. We can't just live in these gray areas and these, like I said, everybody's own personal truth, because then that just leads to chaos. And that's what we're seeing today. Frankly, that's it.
It's so funny you say that you need a black and white. It is interesting. So like my wife and I, because like we said, like my thing is we're not going to the church we necessarily want to go to. We were going to a church just because any Jesus is better than no Jesus. But one of the things that kind of, I pointed out to her was like, if you notice the church we go to does not have a stance on anything whatsoever. There's no black, there's no white. And I hate to say that, like, we need to have these opinions, but I'm like, everything is okay. And you read one scripture in church and then you sing 40 minutes of songs. And I'm like there needs to be a little bit of a black and white. There needs to be versus wrong. And is my way of thinking necessarily the correct way? No, probably not. But at least I have my own way of thinking. And like I said, without any kind of base to where there is right, there is wrong, and then it is just chaos. One of the things we have, and I feel like nowadays, we've stopped letting our children be innocent. I feel like society nowadays just wants to say, here's all the craziness out there. Here's this. You need to worry about this. You need to worry about that. And we have children that are stressing about adult concepts that they have no concept of, there's no way they can even begin to understand these things because we've stopped letting kids be kids.
Their brain capacity, your brain doesn't fully develop until your mid-20s, and kids are seeing stuff that we didn't some of the stuff out here, I didn't even know existed or didn't know what it was. But some stuff like they see, whether we want them to see it or not, if your parents are in control of what you're seeing, like they can see it from another kids, whatever. that we didn't see or experience until we were well into that mid 20 range, or at least 18 or older. And so it just doesn't, it's hard, and it's also hard because of the technology. So I understand now, like we have a lot going on as opposed to back in the day where the kids had to be watched. And sometimes it's so easy. I don't have kids yet, so I am not saying how to raise kids, but it is very easy just to hand somebody like a child, a tablet or whatever to play with. And while it's innocent when they're 3 or 4 years old with the smart games and stuff, they are programmed to start learning, like using that tablet. And so many things are unemotional now over social media that it's not real. Like I could be having the worst day. I could be crying, but then I could take a picture of me smiling and being like, everything's great. And then that's what people see. And it's just so scary and so dangerous in my eyes. So I think when I have kids, people are going to think that I'm like this crazy, weird lady that probably homeschools them. But I just don't know any other way at this point. Like, I don't know.
Honestly, so to Kale's point earlier, we're letting the schools raise our children. And that's not a good thing. Like the government gets very little right. And then what happens though, you come home and you divide your attention between your phone and your children. And that's also not a good thing. Like my job is to be a parent first. My career, my finances, my hobbies be damned. I'll be a parent before I'm anything. If my kids are having problems, I'll sacrifice all of that to make sure that my kids have my full attention, to the point to where my wife and I, we actually do something that I love. And it was her idea. When you get home from work and the kids are around, your phone does not come out. The phone, unless is just unavoidable, we do not get on the phone personal use or for anything until the kids are in bed. And are we perfect? No, but we try our best to stay off of technology. Does our kids watch some TV? Sure. But we also monitor everything they watch. We have a list of shows that they're allowed to watch that all hopefully espouses our morals and virtues. Once again, like I said, is everything that we think and believe correct? Probably not, but at least, like I said, they have their base. But you watch so many parents go out to dinner with their kids and everybody's head is down.
Oh yeah, she did.
And it's guys, just be parents. And you wonder why some of the kids have issues because you're so busy juggling all the other things in life. And you feel like maybe you're checking all the right boxes to be a parent. As you may look at me, I made a 12-course dinner. Yeah, but I also took 3 hours away from my kids while they sat in front of a TV while I made that 12-course dinner. I'd rather you take them to McDonald's for all I care, but spend that entire time with them playing in the ball pit. Spend time with your kids. It's funny, like when I have them on the weekends and my wife's working, first thing we do, we get up, we have breakfast, we go in our sunroom, play games, we read books. Then we go on a nice long walk around the neighborhood. We'll stop at the little jungle gyms while we're here, but we're doing. And kids will be kids and they run all over, they do the thing. And it's great. But once again, they have my full attention. That's what I think we're missing nowadays is like, we're letting everything else. We're letting the TV, we're letting YouTube, we're letting TikTok, we're letting the schools parent our kids where it's just convenient. And you're letting convenience get in the way of a good moral development. Because if my kids turn out to be hellraisers and God knows what they're doing, I gave it my all. I will not feel that, they were missing something. Like I know I gave it my best. And if I failed, then so be it, I failed. But at least I know like I tried as hard as I could.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. 100%. So we do need to wrap it up here, but to close it off, just 2 closing questions here. One is we like to ask for 3 actionable or practical tips based on anything that we discussed that we can leave our audience with.
Yeah, easily. You want 10? I can give you 10.
Fellas, for the love of God, both of you be quiet.
I know, right? That and Brian won't just shut up. No, honestly, the first thing I would tell anybody is when you're trying to get your life, when you're trying to get your finances or your professional life in line or your personal life, identify your goals and know that one thing. Know what is most important in life because all the decisions become really easy. So as long as you're honest with yourself about your goals, even if they're not great goals or they're not the most commendable, be honest about your goals and be honest with yourself. And it makes everything really easy. The next thing I always tell people is, once again, your network is your net worth. Talk to people, build people up around you in your network, help anybody you can get to where they are. Be a giver, not a taker, because it will come back to you at some point. And if it doesn't, who cares? You did something good. So always help people, always build them up, always try to be honest. And then the other thing I would tell people is don't be afraid to fail because failure is part of growing. And it's really easy to say I tried. I had one really successful medical practice. I had one that failed. It would have been really easy for me to go, man, I lost a lot of money. I'm not ever going to try anything again. I'm just going to stick to my W-2 and just recede into the shadows because it's embarrassing. Who cares? Check your ego at the door and dust yourself off and next time succeed. Because once you have that excuse that you can fall on, you're always going to fall on it. So get out there, fail. And like I always said, if you're not going to succeed this time, at least you're going to fail better. And then next time, succeed.
Yeah. Love it. Wonderful. Brenna, take it home.
All right. You mentioned Italian. What is your favorite pizza from where and why?
Oh my gosh. I've been actually quite domesticated. I've been making bread at home. So I've been making my own pizza and making bread. I know. And my personal homemade pizza is by far my favorite. If I had to go for a commercial pizza, I love Giordano's pizza.
Yeah. That's the pizza I'm trying to think of the other day when somebody mentioned deep.
Anytime I go to Orlando, Ohio, or Vegas, I will always stop in for a Giordano's pizza because that big, thick Chicago style is just amazing. You sit down, you order your pizza, then you forget it takes an hour to cook it. Yeah.
It's also heavier than 30 pounds.
Yeah.
It was like 35 pounds or something. It's weird.
And it's so heavy. And then you eat one small piece and you're like, oh my God, I'm stuffed.
I only ate one piece. I'm good. Somebody had the large wine glass and they said they only drank one glass of wine and it was like a whole bottle. Do you, offline, maybe, if you're willing, I would love that homemade recipe if you're willing to give it away. I have plenty of recipes I can trade you if you want them, but yeah.
I feel like a good recipe.
Great. All right, I'm done.
Wonderful. Thank you very much, Matthew. This was very enlightening. I think we had a lot of good input, a lot of good topics, and we learned about anesthesia. So there you go. But thank you for your time. We really appreciate it. And we will see you guys next week. Thank you.
Thank you.